Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Shape Your Life podcast. Today, I've got a guest, and his name is Craig Ballantyne. He's also known as the world's most disciplined man and the author of The Dark Side of Discipline, as well as the Perfect Day Formula. He was the creator of the Turbulence Fitness Training and owns Early to Rise. And he's a former coach of mine who's helped me grow my business tremendously. So, Craig, welcome.
Hey, this is gonna be a lot of fun, Frank.
Yeah, so you wrote a new book, and I like the title already, The Dark Side of Discipline. So, I thought, let's have a talk about that. So, I opened the book because I read it on the plane when I flew from Amsterdam to Vegas. And the first thing he said is like, everything we know about discipline is wrong. So, what's the misconception that most people have when they think about discipline?
Well, everybody thinks that discipline is doing hard things and suffering and just sacrificing your life to these hard things. And when you do that, yes, you can get good at that specific thing, but it doesn't really translate into every area of your life. And so oftentimes what people end up doing is they join a challenge, they read a book a week, they cold plunge, all because they see somebody else doing it. And that's not discipline. You know, chasing somebody else's definition of success is not discipline. What you need to do is identify what really matters to you. And so the ultimate definition of discipline that we describe in the book is putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem, and everything else is just entertainment. And trust me, I've done everything else, and I know that, it felt good or it was a challenge, sure, but it didn't fix my real problems in life. And
Yeah.
only by working really hard on my real problems will fix your real problems. And that's the definition of discipline.
So, I think a good follow-up question on that is so you talk about a level 10 problem, which is the highest.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me an example? What is a level 10 problem and what's a level 1 problem?
Yeah, so a level 10 problem. Here's a great example for the fitness world is, years ago I used to speak at Bedros Keuilian's Fitness Business Summit. And, I did that for like 10 years in a row. And every year I'd look at it and I'd go, there's James and Paul and Jenny all sitting in the same seats. And this year they have 8% body fat, but I know they only have $8 in their bank account because they're not good at sales and marketing. And the entire event was about sales and marketing. So we would teach and give them all this great information. But then I knew that on the breaks, they would go out and talk to the other personal trainers about workouts and nutrition. Fast forward a year, they would come back to the event, sit in the same seats, James, Paulie, and Jenny, or whoever I said, and they would be 7% body fat and they'd have $7 in their bank account. And what they were doing was they were already ripped to shreds. They were already super fit and they were putting a level 10 effort in to getting even more fit. But that wasn't a problem in their life. It was
Yeah.
more of a hobby, but they were good at it. On the flip side, they were really bad at sales and marketing. That was their level 10 problem. They were broke. They were gym owners working, 50, 60, 70 hours a week and then training the rest of the time and had no life and were really frustrated. And they were putting a level 1 effort into it because, they took all the information we taught them and forgot about it. So they were mismatched. They had the level 10 effort into a level 1 problem and a level 1 effort into a level 10 problem. And so people would say, oh, yeah, they're super disciplined, but they weren't. They were really undisciplined because they procrastinated working on the hardest thing. And it breaks my heart when I see that because they think they're doing something good, but they're doing something good that sacrifices what is great. And that's what breaks my heart around discipline.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of it has to do with like the clarity aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed this something as well. If when I coach clients, they have a hard time finding clarity. It's like, okay, but what are my level 10 things?
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your tips for people to find better clarity? To like, okay, where do I actually need to focus on?
Yeah, so listen, this is very simple exercise. You just take out a piece of paper. You don't listen to a podcast, you don't listen to audiobooks, you just sit in silence and you think, what's causing me the most stress in life? And really, in terms of level 10 problems, these should be pretty obvious. Many times people have problems with clarity about what they really want in life, but it should be very clear. Like, if you're in credit card debt or if you're 100 pounds overweight and you have really bad blood lipid profiles and like you're on the verge of a heart attack, that's a level 10 problem. On the flip side, a lot of people have marriages, they've been married for 15 years and, now their kids are, 10, 12 years old and they feel like all they do is drive their kids around to sports and they never get time to connect with their partner. Their partner's always busy with work and the marriage has gone cold. That's a level 10 problem. Like you
Yeah.
really need to take that seriously. Otherwise, you're going to be out of luck. So, those are the types of things that are level 10 problems. And then what you do after you've figured out your level 10 problem, and you might have a couple of them, or you might have like a level 9, level 8, uh,
Yeah.
in addition to the level 10, write, write that down, but then beside it, put what level of effort are you putting into solving this problem? And it's subjective, but you
Yeah.
have to be truly honest with yourself. And if you look at it and go, well, I'm my business is struggling. 3 years in a row, I've made the same amount of money. Even though I'm working a lot of hours, well, am I real? What level of effort
Yeah.
am I putting into learning new things? Maybe a
Yeah,
three or
I
four.
actually do
Yeah.
something similar with clients. So I always tell them like, we got a piece of paper here. So just put a line down the middle, and
Mm-hmm.
then what do you want? What don't you want? This one is very hard to fill in because to fill in what you actually want is for most people like the hardest thing to do. What you absolutely don't want is probably a lot of times a lot easier. You can write probably like 10 things down.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want to be obese. That's one that's
Yeah.
probably easier for most people to write. And then I think, what's the polar opposite of that? And just write them all down and then drop them in like a chat GPT and ask them like, based on this, what do you think my goal is? Where do I need to be? And you'll probably get a pretty good answer if you do that.
Yeah, that's really good. Is For some reason most people do really struggle with figuring out what they want, and all you really need to do is, I have my values and vision exercises that I teach, which you went through, and you have that exercise there because the information is up here. It's
Yeah.
just that it's up there cluttered up with a whole bunch of other thoughts, and that's causing you anxiety and stress, and like everything from what you have to get at the grocery store to when you have to pick the kids up, and your goals and dreams are up here, and it's not until you use pen and paper that you can really get clarity on things. And I tell people all the time that most people are just so reactive to stuff that they see on their phone that they're never proactive in the planning, and they're never really doing any thinking. Thinking is the hardest discipline of all,
Yeah.
and it's much easier to go and jump in a cold plunge than it is to sit in a room with your own thoughts and think. Most people want to avoid that more than anything else.
Well, I have a follow-up question on that, which you probably have with a lot of your closing clients, and that's their screen time is off the charts. Like they're crazy on their phone, like they're watching Instagram Reels and they're swiping TikToks. How do you stop them from doing that?
Well, that's a great question. And so, if you want to change any bad habit, the first thing to do is you must do elimination. So, there's three steps: elimination, preparation, and connection. And the first step is elimination. So, we recommend that people use something like an app called the Opal app, OPAL. It's got 4 million downloads, almost a 5-star review, and it just blocks you from going on your phone at certain times. So, if you know that you need to work on a very important project from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., you use the Opal app on your phone and it blocks you. Now you can still, get around it by using your laptop, but shut your laptop down or turn off the Wi-Fi, and it'll help you to focus, because the phone is just designed to be addictive, and you must build a fence around yourself so that it
Yeah.
does not come in and steal the time in your day. Because otherwise, listen, it even happens to me once in a while where the time just gets eaten up and you aren't able to put that effort into what really matters. The other thing is, on the flip side, is identify that level 10 problem and then give level time attention to it during your day. And you have to identify when are you most focused and productive, and block that time to only be used on your hardest product
Yeah.
problems.
So I used a similar app. I think mine's called AppBlock, and I could set it up that certain apps I could use for a limited amount of time. So I put Instagram, for example, on 20 minutes. You'll be surprised how fast you reach 20 minutes on Instagram if you don't pay attention. I was like, really? Am I already up to 20 minutes? I was like, I still got to do my Q&A. Like
Yeah.
I literally have to start with that, otherwise my time is up. It goes so
Yeah,
fast.
absolutely.
Yeah. So you tell the story of Chuck in the book. Can you
Hmm.
explain a little bit for people that haven't read the book yet, like a little bit out about the backstory about that? Because I think that's something that's very relatable for a lot of people that actually gives people a lot of problems. Because I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest things we see around that happens a lot.
Yeah. So, the story that I'm about to share, I've had people that have been special forces, Navy SEALs, in the Army, all that sort of stuff, read this book and they go, I thought you had looked into my diary and were writing about me because, years ago I was in this challenge and my wife said she was going to the beach with the kids. And, she expected me to go with her. And I said, no, I got to do this workout for this challenge. And, she looked at me like she was about to give me a divorce. And I've seen this actually happen to people that, I just watch them online. I'm like, man, I know this guy runs a busy business and he's doing this challenge and now he's doing it again. And I know that, I've heard that, he would love to spend more time with his family. Why is he doing this challenge that takes 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day and not spending the time with his family? And like, this can't end well. And sure enough, I know a couple of guys, so the story is like basically a couple of guys kind of turned into one story where their wife left them with the kids because half the time they were in these challenges and half the time they were on the phone for work, and they never had time for their family. And again, like the challenge, the stuff in the challenge, like reading a book and cold plunging and exercising, those are good things. But they let the good things sacrifice the great. And that's
Yeah.
one of the themes that goes through the book. You cannot sacrifice the great for the good things. Say no. Don't chase other people's definitions of discipline. Just because other people are doing this doesn't mean you have to go and, join the crowd. You have to think for yourself. And so I saw it. And, for it had been many years since I had written my last book, The Perfect Week Formula, in 2019. And I had I had these systems, these effortless discipline systems, but it didn't feel like a good enough, complete book until I
Yeah.
saw this happening to everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people I knew. And I was like, man, I got to speak up about this. And it's my most controversial book, but the podcasts I've done, and people have been arguing with me, and eventually most of them see my point of view that this stuff is not to be, there is a dark side of discipline, and it can cut you bad.
Yeah, because you're known for like being the most well disciplined man. Like there's even a story about it that you exercised for 1,000 days consecutively and woke up at
Right.
3:57 a.m., which is
Yeah.
very early. So when did you see the point that it was like, okay, this isn't helping me anymore. This is actually working against me. Like, what was that point that you're like, hey, what am I doing?
I would say around, the time that I met you, which was 2018. And, I was traveling the world doing these, seminars. And then I was having my big seminar, and I had written my perfect day formula in 2015. And in that book, I talked about in 5 years from now, I'm going to be married with kids. And here we are now, like 2018, 2019, we're getting close to 2020. And I had not achieved what really was my level 10 problem. The level 10 thing can be an opportunity, not just a
Yeah,
problem. So it's like, if your Facebook ads start to work and you're starting to make money, that's a level 10 opportunity. You got to go hardcore on it, make sure you're
yeah,
giving enough attention. And for me, my level of 10 opportunity was, to find an amazing woman. And I was procrastinating on it. I was, because, when you go out and you try and meet the love of your life, there's the risk of rejection. And I think that I was protecting myself from the risk of rejection by not getting serious about
yeah,
it. And so it was easier for me to say, oh, I got to work out today. I can't go, I'm at this seminar, but I got to go work out. I can't go to the social hour or whatever, because I also, I'm kind of have some introverted tendencies. So I'm not really great in crowds and stuff like that. So it was easier for me to take that path of least resistance, which was, to some people, like working out and getting up really early is a hard one. But for me, it's really easy. It just naturally comes easy to me. And so I would do that. And I was doing the good, but sacrificing the great. And so it was at one of my big event in 2019, 300 people there. And I shared this 90-day plan. I just decided, I'm like, man, I got to go all in here. And I shared my 90-day plan that I was going to meet my wife. It's
yeah,
a 90-day plan to have 12 dates with in next 90 days. And whether it was 12 dates with one girl or one date with 12 girls, didn't matter. But I shared this publicly. And then people held me accountable to it, and I followed through on the actions. I got introduced to the woman, Michelle, who would become my wife, and it all worked out. And I got married, and a little bit after that deadline that I put in my 5 year vision. So it was really when it was getting close to the deadline for that goal that I had shared publicly, which is
yeah,
the power of connection, that I really put in place the preparation, which is so I eliminated the bad habit, put in planning the preparation, got connection for accountability, and everything turned itself around. But there were times where I knew it. I knew it's like, man, what am I doing? I'm putting myself in a prison of discipline, which a lot of people do, and that's the dark side. And I don't want people to get to that point.
yeah. So one thing that I noticed that you do very well, because I was there in San Diego when you was on stage and you talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing when you basically gave up swearing and a couple other things. You announce it publicly. So people see it and they will catch you if you do it wrong. But
Yeah.
I know so many people that are like, no, I don't want to share my goals. I want to keep them private. I want to do it basically secretly and then achieve them. But I rarely see that working. So what's
No,
that?
no, because you're the easiest person to let down, right? Like if you keep this goal inside of you of like, hey, I'm only going to get 10 training clients, or you just say to yourself like, this year I'm going to lose 30 pounds, but you never tell anyone. Well, there isn't any pressure, like there isn't anybody checking in on you, and it
Yeah,
is that outside source of accountability that keeps you going through the tough times. So the other thing, Frank, is that I think a lot of people are not surrounded by positive people. And you and I have made our entire life's mission to only be around positive people. And there
yeah,
is a lot of people who are not surrounded by positive people. Now, the good thing is that online communities are just as powerful as in person for connection. So you can go online and it's easier to find online communities of positive people, whether it's through your group or whether it's through some business program that somebody connects with, or, there's lots of Facebook groups out there of positive people. And that will work. So sharing that with positive people will help. And, so if you think like, oh, everybody at my gym is kind of negative, or everybody in my family, they'd
yeah.
laugh at my goals. You don't have to tell them, but you do have to tell somebody.
Now I can remember that because basically I think the UK is worse, but the Netherlands isn't that great either. In that the regard is, if you look at like I'm right now in Vegas, people are ambitious like crazy here.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you compare it to the Netherlands, then people are more like hold back, shy a little bit. But what I do realize, like I always look at it like this, is if I look at my WhatsApp and I look at the last 10 conversations, how many people are there that are supporting my goals, or how many people are actively working against my goals? Like you added when you gave up drinking, is like if you went through your bodies all the time were actively drinking, you're most likely to relapse and start
Yeah.
drinking
Of
again.
course.
So I looked at my phone at one point. I was like, oh, there are not many good people in here. So how can I change this? So yeah, the thing that I used in the beginning was YouTube. I was like, I can at least watch people that inspire me, that I get
Yeah.
motivation from. It's free. You can just use it. You just find people that you get inspired by, and use that in the beginning. And even a couple of years later, I've met most of them. I even became friends with a few of them, but they helped
Yeah.
me get to the next level.
Yeah, and exactly that's what Napoleon Hill talks about in Think and Grow Rich. Is he made up this mastermind in his head of people that were dead, but like Abraham Lincoln and stuff like that. And it's like, but they still helped them because he just kind of, a lot of faith-based people wear "What would Jesus do" bracelets, like, and that's the same thing. It's like, okay, you watch Tony Robbins, you watch Frank, you watch Bedros, you watch Craig, you watch all these other people, and you go, huh, what would they tell me to do right now? In fact,
Yeah,
a coaching client of mine was asking, like, hey, what would you do in this situation where, they're going through a bit of a tough time in their business and they have to do a meeting with their team and they want to be optimistic? And he goes, like, how would you do it? And I said to him, well, I would, Bedros Keuilian is a mentor of mine, and I just think, what would Bedros expect of me? I'm going to go and do that. That's how like, it's not a
yeah,
fancy 10-point answer. It's just the people that I look up to, they know me. They know what I'm capable of doing. What would they expect of me? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do more. And that's
yeah,
that's how I approach a lot of things in my life.
yeah. I think that works. I use the same analogy for a lot of stuff. So you coach many entrepreneurs and leaders. What patterns do you see in people who are successfully applying discipline to the right versus the ones who are stuck?
So the interesting thing is that the discipline, this is a discipline that most people don't expect I'm going to say, but it's the discipline of saying no. So as you start a business, as you get more successful, as your YouTube gets more followers, your Instagram gets more followers, you get more clients, like you yourself, you tell me like it takes you 3 hours to get through the airport because everybody wants a photo with you. Like when you get to that point, and even at lower levels, everybody wants time from you. Everybody wants
Yeah,
time. They want to ask you questions. And if you say yes to all those things, if you say yes to all the partnerships, all the like, hey, let's start a business together, if you say yes to all of those like good things, well, there's a great thing that you're supposed to be accomplishing and you end up saying no to it. So I
yeah,
look at the most successful people I know, and there's a guy named Jason Capital that you know and I know. Man, this guy is the absolute best at killing good things. So he might have a business that's making him $1 million, which sounds amazing to most people. But if Jason knows that that $1 million business is stopping him from a $10 million business, he'll kill that thing, won't even like think twice. He'll just say, no, we're going to shut that down today. If anybody bought today, we're going to refund them. If somebody wants a refund, we'll refund it, but we're not continuing this program because this opportunity over here is much better for me, and I'm going to go and focus on it. And
yeah.
like I've seen him do it multiple times, and most people have a scarcity mindset and they think that no other good opportunities going to come along. So that saying no is such a huge muscle that you have to build
Yeah.
up. And it's not going to be comfortable at first. But just like, your first weight workout wasn't comfortable, look how strong you are now. And it's the same with saying no. And you can say no politely, and you can say no in a way that, could be not now, but, maybe in the future, but it's no right now, but it's more
Yeah.
of a not now. You can be polite about it, but you have to stay focused. And that's what separates the people who really have big results from those people that get stuck.
Yeah. One thing I really liked about the book was you and Daniel developed like a pyramid of peak performance.
Mhm.
Can you walk me through that framework for people so that they understand how it actually works?
Yeah, so the six levels of peak performance, it's kind of like the one at the top is the least effective and takes the most effort. And then as you go down, the one on the bottom, the foundation of it, which we'll get to in a second, it takes the least effort, but it's the most powerful. So at the top, you have motivation. And you can watch a motivational YouTube video every morning and it'll kind of get you fired up for a few minutes. But when it comes to like the day really comes at you hard, that motivational video isn't going to really do anything for you. So yeah, you can watch it, but it's just a little bit of help. The next is identifying some type of personal challenge, not the generic challenges that are out there. They're okay if you're in a like if you're an alcoholic and if you're severely obese, the generic challenges that are out there are they're like if you're drowning in the ocean and somebody throws you a lifeline. That's helpful, but for somebody that's already lean and successful, that's not what you need to get to the next level.
Yeah.
Maybe come up with a personal challenge like I'm going to do 100 Instagram videos in the next 50 days. That's a good personal challenge if you want to get better at speaking. But
Yeah.
those things are okay, but they're not great. The next is like discipline. So the third level is those motivation challenges, then discipline. And discipline is essentially in most people's mind, it's willpower. Like discipline to them is sitting in front of a piece of chocolate cake when you're starving, you're on your weight loss diet, and you have a photo shoot next week, and you're with friends, and it's 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and they put the chocolate cake in front of you, and somebody says, "Come on, have some." In most people's minds, that's what they think about when they think about discipline. But that's exhausting, and
Yeah.
that can only work for short periods of time if you have a really great incentive. Now, when we get to the next level, systems, that's where things start to really have power and leverage. Because if you build systems using elimination, preparation, and connection, you really don't have to rely on your own willpower anymore. You've built a system. So, when many people come to you, Frank, and say, I want to start exercising, but I've never been able to make it work in the past. You tell them to, get a professional program from you. So you have follow along videos. You tell them to put your exercise clothes out beside the bed. So you just wake up, roll over, put
Yeah.
them on, and go right to the workout, right? There's no friction in the way. So you teach people that system, and they need less willpower and discipline, and you get them involved in the community, sharing their goals, and they're like, man, I don't want to let anybody down, so you do the work. So the systems are really powerful, and they helped me remove almost every bad habit from my life, and they
Yeah.
helped me add a whole bunch of good ones. And again, it doesn't take a lot of mental energy for me to make the right decisions. So now I get to a point where I got these systems in place, like, man, I'm the type of person who doesn't swear. So now I'm changing my identity. It's like the person who says I'm always late. Well, if you're the person who says I'm always late, will you ever be on time? No, you're never going to be on time. You're always going to be late. You're giving yourself permission. Your identity is wrapped up in it. Your habits promote you being late. But if you start to say, you know what, I'm going to put in some systems that get me up on time and get me to the place on time, so I'm on time. Now you start to believe like I'm the type of person who shows up on time, and you don't need the systems anymore. It starts to become almost effortless. And for me, like, I'm not a drinker, so I can go to any party and I'm not going to drink any alcohol and feel tired the next day because I'm not a drinker. I don't care if you drink, but I'm not a drinker, so no problem. I don't do this bad habit. I don't do this bad habit. I don't swear. I don't care if anybody else swears. I just personally don't swear. And I'm a writer, so I write first thing in the morning every day. I exercise every single day. I'm a good father, so I'm always, if my kids get up in the middle of the night, I go and help them out. That's just what I do. That's who I am. So it's very
Yeah.
easy to make those decisions. And then finally, you have standards, which are like an operating system for yourself, where you don't even have to think about it because your identity has become so strong and you've set these high standards that you know who you want to become. So I guess this really takes that thinking of figuring out who you want to become, and then you start to, you set up the systems, you build belief, and now you set the higher standards so that it's stronger than any discipline. It's just stronger. Like, I just don't eat chocolate cake, on a weekday. Maybe on the weekends for special occasions, but I just don't eat chocolate cake. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it does not like, oh man, I really want some, but I can't have any. Like that's hard. But standards, it's just so much
I
simpler.
thought standards was more like the level you did a certain system at.
Well, listen, I mean, your standards are set by you at a higher level, and the
Yeah.
systems and identity support it for sure.
Yeah.
And you definitely go back to they're like your core values
Yeah,
essentially.
but go,
And
like I'll take an example. If I go to the gym, one of my standards is if I'm there, I might as well give it my all. I'm not
mhm,
gonna do like a 50% workout. Like then I'm better stay
right,
home. Like
yeah,
so that's my standard of stuff that
that's
I do.
good.
Yeah. Or when I'm working, like I'm working. I'm not procrastinating, watching videos and
Mhm,
stuff like that. No, I'm working. So
right,
yeah, that's how I look at it.
I like that.
Yeah. So the concept of identity plays a big role in lasting discipline. How can somebody rewire his identity to align with their goals? Because that's one of the things that's probably a challenge. Is like I see a lot of people use like weak language instead of like a
Yeah.
strong language when changing their identity, which makes them relapse. So how do you change that language that they actually use strong words to actually get the right identity for them for their goals?
Yeah, it's super important to reframe your brain around things. And it's I am, not I will, but I am the type of person that does XYZ. And you have to look for the evidence. The systems will make it easier for you to do the correct activity, which gives you the evidence, which then allows you to say, I am the type of person that does this. And a lot of this does come down to your core values because I've talked to a lot of friends who they hear me. I talk a lot about pornography in the book, and I say, you're not if you're a person with integrity, if you're a family man, if you're an honorable man, you're not the type of person who looks at pornography. And when I reframed it in that argument, a lot of people who had struggled to quit for years with challenges and discipline, all that sort of stuff, they said, I quit overnight because I just reframed who I was. Because you're right, I am a family man, I am an honorable man, I am a the type of person who doesn't do that. That behavior is not in alignment with the identity. And
Yeah.
that's the strength and power that people need to make that big shift. And, sometimes it can happen almost overnight.
Yeah, I think a lot of things. When I was reading the book, I think a lot of them has basically to do is like how can you control the dopamine pulses you get on a daily basis? How do you control them? Because
Exactly.
that's probably where 90% is about.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, they see this stuff on their explore page or through ads or whatever, and it is so tempting. And the reason why it's so tempting is because we're ambitious people. The people that listen to this podcast, you're ambitious. You want to achieve things. You want to have it all. You want to achieve it all. You want to experience it all. You want to travel all over the world. And you see somebody doing something on Instagram that, like it's a good thing, like maybe going to Dubai and, riding camels. And it's like, that's not a discipline thing, but it's like a life experience. And like, man, I'm going to go and do that. But you didn't wake up thinking, I need to go to Dubai and ride camels to, really soon. You just saw it and you're reacting to it. And
Yeah,
so it's that reaction that you have to control. And how do you control that? It's by stepping back and thinking, what really matters to me? What
yeah.
really matters to me? And I'm just going to run my own race in life.
So the one thing that I always teach clients is think about a decision, how you're going to feel about it in 10 minutes, 10 hours, and 10 days.
That's another good one.
And then based on that, make a decision. There's no right or wrong answer, but just think about it like how you're going to look at that.
That's what we're trying to do in the book is give people a filter through which to make decisions. So another thing that we talk about is you take a look at all the challenges and the hard things that you're doing and just ask yourself this question. Is this necessary or sufficient for success? Is this necessary? Is everybody who's successful, have they done this activity? So cold plunging, for example,
Yeah,
everybody who's successful has Taylor Swift. I mean, I've looked up so many articles on Taylor Swift. I can't find any evidence that she cold plunges. Elon Musk, no. I mean, you go through, you can find thousands of people who are very successful and they've never done a cold plunge. So it is not necessary to do the cold plunge in order to be successful.
yeah,
Now, the flip side is it sufficient? If I do this, has everybody who does cold plunges, are they successful? And the answer is no. I know a lot of people who struggle with a lot of things in life who do cold plunges, but it hasn't made much difference, or they're just not getting ahead. So it's not enough either. So it's not necessary and it's not enough. So if you're doing it, you're just doing it for entertainment. And
Yeah.
that's the way you filter everything through it. What really is important is, do you do the work? Yep. Do you do
Yeah.
the hard work? That's what you need to be successful.
I would say if you do a cold plunge and you're gonna do then all the tasks for the day faster and more efficient, yeah, do the cold plunge. But otherwise, don't do it.
Right. If it works for you that way, for sure.
Yeah,
And doing the cold plunge doesn't take up so much time that it erases all the benefits of doing everything else faster.
yeah. So one thing that I liked about book because I use this so much is the health framework, the hungry, angry, lonely, and
Ah,
tired
yeah.
framework. Yeah. So what practical steps can people take to break free from these patterns? Because that's one that I see so much is all the bad mistakes are usually related back to that they make.
Yeah, so in the book we talk about HALT, and I got, my friend Bedros Keuilian went to a therapist named Kevin Downing, and Kevin introduced Bedros to this idea because Bedros he's an entrepreneur, and he used to binge eat at night after stressful days.
Yeah,
And Kevin said, man, when you act out, when you do something that you shouldn't be doing, it's because you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Where, the Snickers commercial says you're hangry, right? And so a lot of people will find themselves in that position, especially like if you're driving home and you get stuck in traffic and you're hungry and you've had a stressful day and now you're angry in traffic. Like that's when like people, drive their cars into other people. They do something that's so out of line because those things were compounding. So when you do something, what you need to do is you need to do reflection. You need to look back and go, all right, at the end, and this is the exercise we teach in the book, is do a review every single day of how you wanted your day to go and how it actually went. And
yeah,
where did something go wrong? So it might be that you woke up and you hit snooze, and that one wrong thing then made you have too much caffeine. You got stuck in traffic. You got angry. So when you got to work, you snapped at somebody. And then when you got home at night, you got angry at the dog about something that was just small. And then your kids were like, why are you so angry? And, it's just, so now you go, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to make sure that I get up on time so that I don't have all of these things happen. Or you find yourself, maybe you're on a fitness program, and, Wednesday afternoon, at work, you always have 3 or 4 meetings in a row. And by the end, you're really hungry. And the next thing you know, you end up at McDonald's, eating 2,000 calories. And that happens 2 weeks in a row. Well, okay, you know that this is going to be that way next week. So you have to plan and prepare properly. So it's through that review and self reflection that you basically get 1% better every day. You find the mistake, you build a system to not make the mistake again. And now you're going to be in a better place. And yeah, there'll be more mistakes. Nobody's perfect, and even I make mistakes once in a while. But when I do, I go back and I break it down. I reverse engineer. How did
yeah,
this happen so that I don't do it again?
yeah. So we talk a lot about systems. So what's one system that people can implement today that will probably benefit them?
Frank, the more that I coach people, the more that I realize that like one of the most basic habits for success is getting to bed on time. Because if
Yeah,
somebody doesn't get to bed on time, then they don't generally don't get up on time, or they get up tired, and they get up tired or late, and the rest of the day is just kind of off. So this one of the most important systems is to get to bed on time. So how do we do that? First of all, you set an alarm an hour before your bedtime. So if you want to go to bed at 11 o'clock, 10 p.m., the alarm goes off. And that means you turn off all your electronics. You turn off your laptop, your phone, your TV, everything. So you're left with, things that you could do only in the 1980s, right? And so you read, you make your lunch, you do some meal prep, you talk to your spouse, you take a bath, you do a meditation. All these things help you wind down. You might even get to bed early. And if you fall asleep early, that means you're going to get up on time for sure, and you're going to be well rested. And that gives you a much greater chance of being successful tomorrow. And it all starts with that simple system. And everyone
yeah,
could probably implement that and benefit from it.
yeah. I think another one that you taught me that really works well is already making a to-do list in the evening instead of the morning off,
Yeah,
because
make a
that
to do
saves you
list at
so
night.
much time. And I notice like when I wake up, I already know what I need to do. and you're just more focused straight away instead of that you wake
Absolutely.
up.
And I actually believe there's some magic that if your brain knows what it's going to work on in the morning, it actually figures out some problems while you're sleeping. Because I've done that a few times and got up the next morning. I got so much work done in an hour. I couldn't believe it because I feel like my brain figured out the answers while I was sleeping.
I do realize that. Sometimes when I went to bed, I have no clue how I'm going to do this, and I wake up and I already know the solution.
I
I'm
love it.
like, yeah, okay. So then the other one that I like is you encourage people to create a not to do list. So
Yeah.
can you like so? Why is subtraction more effective than adding more stuff in? Because
Yeah.
that's
So
basically something that's I see a lot of that people have to-do lists that never end, and they probably can be better at just create a non-to-do list, make the to-do list a lot smaller.
yeah. Well, I mean, so let's use nutrition as an analogy, right? So if somebody's on a diet and they want to burn fat, if you add a green juice to your diet, that might help a little bit, right? But if you're going to the Cheesecake Factory or you're going to a McDonald's twice a week and consuming 2,000 calories in a meal, removing that from your diet is going to give you more results than adding a green juice. And it's the same for almost any, life hacking or biohacking in life is that adding these little things, they have such a small improvement. But if you look at your biggest bad habits in life, whether it's, you watch too much Netflix at night or pornography or you drink alcohol too much or whatever it is, getting rid of that, discipline through subtraction, eliminating the bad habit will, just move you so much further ahead in life. So going through, everybody should create their own custom not to do list because it might be that, there's somebody on social media that makes you angry, right? And so you need to block that person and or at least say I'm not going to go on social media and look at that person's content, or I'm not going to consume a certain
Yeah,
type of content on social media, or at least during certain hours, because it can really throw you off for many hours later because it gives you that angry and the halt factor. So identify the things that are holding you down the most. What's
yeah.
weighing you down the most? And getting rid of those is probably going to be more beneficial than, blue light blockers or infrared sauna. Those are good, but they're
I'll
not.
give you a funny example. So
Yeah.
Paulo's in the prep for a show last year, and before the show, she unfollowed like all the other girls on Instagram. She made more progress that single week when she unfollowed everybody than every other week.
Wow.
Because
Is
you would just drive yourself crazy. You're like, oh, that person looks great. That person is doing well. They're doing this. Do I need to do this? All
right.
that stuff. And she just stopped doing that. And it helped so much. I was like, I can make a nutrition switch or like add more exercise, but I'm not going to compare it to that.
No, I mean it's the ball and chain that's holding you down, and we have those things in our life, and it's taking up a lot of mental energy. So when you remove it, it just frees you up, and you feel lighter, and you're more effective, and you perform better, you're happier, and when you're happier, you work better, and away you go.
Yeah. So then a good question. If someone is listening today and they're feeling overwhelmed, stuck in with the wrong discipline habits, unsure where to start, what's the first thing they should do?
Man, we need to step back. We need to step back and figure out what really matters to us and why are we doing all of this in the first place? And so we walk people through a three-step thing. We first of all, like, let's figure out your big why. What is the thing that really drives you in life? And for me, it's freedom for my family so that I'm able to have more time with my kids. I'm an older father. I didn't have kids until I was late in life. And because of that, I mean, I just want to make sure I maximize all my time with them. So I designed my life around it. So whatever it is for you, and whether it's, around family or whether it's around, helping a certain number of people. I have a coaching client whose mother died early from type 2 diabetes, and her big why is to go and help um, other people's mothers so that they don't suffer the same fate because it hurt her so much. So find out why you're doing it, which then it starts to give you that North Star, which is like your direction for your life. So you have a straight line to success and you stop taking detours. And it will become very clear then that this is the filter you run through things or everything through. You're like, okay, if I want to achieve this, it's my big why in life, and I'm doing this, does this thing take me closer to or further away from my goals?
Yeah.
Is it taking so much time that I can't really work on it? If it is, then I have to say no to it. And that's the first thing. Then we go to the next step and we do the vision for your life. And you've done that with me at the workshops, creating a 3 to 5 year vision, telling me exactly where you're going to live, what your family situation is like, what your workouts are like, what your fitness is like, what your vacations are like, what your kids do and what you don't do, what your work week looks like. Tell me exactly how your life is going to look like in 3 years. And now I'm going to be able to tell you exactly what you should do and what is
Yeah.
unnecessary. And be able to give you the perfect blueprint. And then
Yeah.
having a specific definition of success for the short term. So when somebody comes to me and says they want to be more disciplined, that's not specific, right? That could mean anything from, controlling your phone to starting exercise. So tell me specifically what's your definition of success? And then again, I can give you the blueprint and we can use that as a filter. Is this moving me ahead or is this taking me away from it? And now it's going to be a whole lot easier to make those decisions.
So one thing that I did notice when I did the coaching program with you is we basically rescheduled my calendar like a lot.
Yeah.
And so when I got that vision clear, and you said to me, like, okay, make your top 5 priorities right now and put them number one first in your calendar, and then number two, then number three. And I actually looked back at it later and I was like, hey, this is the week that I started with Greg. And then the week before, and I looked at my top 5 priorities. The week before, four of them wasn't even in there. They basically
Yeah.
were not in my calendar at all. I didn't have
Wow.
space for it, while it was actually important to me. And that's where you see basically gap. And I noticed it with so many coaching clients as well. They're doing a lot of stuff, and it doesn't actually relate to their goals and where they want to go to. So that's something that I did notice like a lot.
And that's the thing is again, they're ambitious people. They want to do a lot of stuff. They think that doing a lot of stuff because they see other people on social media doing stuff. They think they have to do all that stuff, and then they see another person. Well, I got to do all their stuff, and then I got to do all their stuff, and it becomes first of all exhausting, but second of all, if you want to do great things, you have to do fewer things, right? You can't
Yeah.
like you can't write a great book while also being in a fitness competition and running 3 businesses and traveling the world. Like you can't do all that. You got to take time and just focus on the one thing. Keep the main thing for a bit, finish that, then move on to the next one.
Yeah. So that's a question that I follow. How do you get somebody to keep focused by themselves? Because that's something that I do realize, like with accountability, it's a lot easier because somebody can basically like, what are you doing? But a lot of people try to go by themselves and do it. How do they stay focused on a single task without external accountability? Because
Yeah,
that's, I think,
they got to get the external accountability. Like it's you can set up the elimination, you can do the
yeah,
preparation, but if you can also just sit there and not do the work because there's no consequence. If you don't have accountability, then you have to have the discipline to enforce consequences on yourself. So you might say to yourself, I'm going to create a course or I'm going to write a book in the next 90 days. And if I don't get it done, then, this trip that I had planned, I have to cancel it. Now, most people won't even follow through on that because they'll be like, well, nobody knows I made that promise to myself. So it's
yeah.
almost, you almost always have to have the external promises. Now there's people like Kobe Bryant didn't have to make external promises to himself, but the majority of people do have to get the accountability and make the external promises because that's the only consequence that will actually move them to moving ahead with what they want to achieve. So that's why I'm so big on it. I'm so big on that connection part and getting
Yeah.
accountability. Either, the accountability can be to just a single person. Like you could have told Paula, or you could have told one of your brothers, or you could have told one of your other mentors who you just like, there's no way I'm letting this person down. You don't have to
I
tell
think
a
that's a
million.
very important one that you don't want to let the person down.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've had hired other coaches in my life where I did most of what they said, but they were I liked them, I respected them, but I didn't really care if I let them down in any way. They had a lot of other
Yeah.
clients, they were doing fine. But when I finally got coaches like there's Bedros and this guy Joel and this other guy named Matt, when I finally got coaching from them, I didn't want to let them down, and that's when I had the really really great results. So it can be one person, or if you don't have that one person, that's when you go to the community because you feel like you've said it to the world, and
Yeah.
you don't. If you're in a person of integrity, you don't want to be a hypocrite because being a hypocrite is pretty low. And so you were like, man, I've told people that I'm gonna do this, so I'm gonna do this. Like there's no other option for me.
I think that's also the things that I see on social media. The people that grow the fastest are the people that set a goal and actually go for it and document that.
Yep.
they make such a big transformation. It's insane if you see that.
Yeah, because like when I ran my fitness transformation contest, we had all these people come in on day one, and the people who were sticking around after 12 weeks were the people who posted their before photo on day one. So a lot of people would post like, "Hey, we had a forum, right?" And they would post in the forum and say, "Hey, I'm joining the program," and that was it. But the people who said, "Hey, I'm joining the program. Here's my before photo, and I'm very embarrassed by it," like those people stuck to the end. It was almost like a guarantee that they would at least finish, if not win the thing, because they
Yeah.
posted that picture. But there was no like consequence to the other person. They didn't have anything to lose because they didn't post a picture, so they were kind of anonymous, and they could just go through and like after 3 weeks go, I'm not going to do it anymore. But
Yeah.
man, if you posted, you would stick with it.
Yeah. I think this is very valuable info for a lot of people. So what's one thing that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
I would say, see, you asked me about how I screwed up. I mean, you know, in order to write the book, you have to live the book. And so you asked me about how I use discipline, um, or how I, went too far with discipline. So that was good. And then you asked me about level 10, and you asked me about, I brought up the necessary but sufficient. Um, well, I guess we could say, the people who are like, there's a lot of people out there who do challenges and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, they probably like, they don't like what I'm saying.
Yeah. But
So
do you think people can train willpower?
yes, you can, but here's the thing. That's a good question. You can train willpower, but it is like training an exercise. If you want to squat 1,000 pounds and you only do leg press, you're never going to squat 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
If you want to improve your willpower around alcohol and you say, okay, I'm going to go and do cold plunges, that will not train your willpower around alcohol. Because one thing that we didn't cover was this really strong belief that I have that discipline is not a transferable trait. So if you
Yeah.
take a look at Tiger Woods, 15 or 20 years ago, he was the most disciplined golfer in the world, but he was the most undisciplined man in the world, cheating on his wife with multiple women. So he's extremely disciplined and extremely undisciplined at the same time.
Yeah.
Therefore, doing a challenge, even a fitness competition, it makes you specifically disciplined. Your willpower is specifically improved. But it does not mean that because you do a fitness challenge that and you're a business owner, that you're going to have the strength and courage to go and have difficult conversations with your team members who are slacking or who are have a bad attitude. Like I see
Yeah.
this all the time. I know lots of people who are fitness competitors, but they won't talk to their employee who's stealing from them. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like you have to go and have the conversation with them and they're too scared to do it. Well, they have willpower in fitness, but they don't have willpower in leadership. And those two things have to be trained individually.
Yeah. I think it's like a skill acquisition thing. It's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah, so let's say you do cold plunges, you improve the skill of doing cold plunging, but that doesn't make you be more productive in other stuff. Like
No,
you probably get more energy from doing the cold plunge, but it doesn't translate directly in doing the other stuff. So I think there's a big difference in those two things.
right, exactly. Like for example, with the cold plunge thing, I don't do it very often, but my wife and I for a date day last week, we went to this one of these places in Vancouver. There's a lot of them where you can do sauna and cold plunge, go back and forth. And I don't really, people call me like the world's most disciplined man because I'm productive, but I'm not really like hardcore disciplined. Like I don't do all the crazy things on YouTube or Instagram. But I knew that I could just go and sit in a tub of water for 3 minutes. So I went into the 1 degree Celsius water and I sat there for 3 minutes and it sucked, but I knew I could do it because it's almost like a magic trick, right? It's like a
Yeah.
little parlor trick. If you want to do it, you can do it. But that doesn't mean that I am the perfect leader in my business and I have amazing patience and they just don't transfer that much. And I think that people are getting like they're putting all their hopes that if I can just finish this challenge, it'll solve all my problems in life, but it doesn't. And that's one of the big things that another one of the big things I'm trying to get across here.
Yeah. So if people want to find the book and they want to read it, where can they find it?
Yeah, go to darksideofdiscipline.com. You can either get it there and get some extra videos, or you can go to Amazon. We have the audiobook, ebook, paperback, and hard copy. The audiobook was a challenge of my personal discipline because have you ever filmed it, recorded an audiobook?
I'm doing one at the moment, and it's frustrating.
It is because imagine, everybody listening, imagine that every sentence you said had to be said perfectly so that everyone could understand every single word. And sometimes when you write a book, like the words read well in somebody's head, but when you try to say them out loud, like there's a, you know, like two THs, in the English language, like it's like Thursday thirsty or something like that. And like you trip over those words and you have to do the sentence like 10 or 12 times. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And speaking for, my audiobook was only 2 hours and 38 minutes, but it took me 6 hours to record it. And I was wiped out by the end of the day. So, and there were moments because when I read my audiobook, I use my radio voice, which is totally different than my YouTube
Yeah.
interview voice. And so remaining in that character, which is better for the listener, it was very difficult after about hour four. And so it's like
Yeah.
running a mental marathon. But so,
You did
anyways,
it in one go because I basically broke it up by chapter.
I did because I was using a studio, so I had to rent the studio. So I had done this was my fourth audiobook, right? Because I'd done
Yeah.
Perfect Day, I'd done Unstoppable, I'd done Perfect Week, and most of those other ones I did it over the course of 2 days. But this was my shortest book, and we were able to start at 9 in the morning and finish at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a break for lunch, and it I was I was just about out of steam for the day when we finally finished up.
Yeah, you were quiet at home the rest of the
Yeah, exactly.
day. Well, thank you, Greg, and I hope people enjoyed it. Yeah. If you want to find more about Greg, I will put everything also in the description below. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.